See, the problem is that I feel like the one thing Incredibles 2 did was make me kind of hate Mr. Incredible. I am happy that they waited so long to do this sequel. I think that they actually developed a plot that's really interesting and that they developed interesting characters. I think my enjoyment of it maybe suffered from the inundation of superhero movies that exist now versus when the first Incredibles came out. Or possibly my view of the first Incredibles suffers from a nostalgia factor and it wasn't as glorious as I imagined. But this film underwhelmed me, I guess, in a couple of ways, but mostly in the depiction of Mr. Incredible. So, jumping backwards a little bit, let's go over some plot. This takes place pretty much right after The Incredibles ends, which is a funny, dichotomy that the film takes place instantly after, but the filming of the film takes place like 14 years, 10 years? I don't know how long it's been since the first Incredibles came out, but a while. And so despite that, there is an instantaneousness to the in-film universe. And basically superheroes are still illegal, but Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl get called in with Frozone by this fancy corporate guy whose dad loved superheroes, and so this guy loved superheroes and he thinks they should be legal. So he endeavors to make that happen by putting body cams on the superheroes so that when they're fighting crime, people will see all the good they do rather than what they currently see in the media, which is all the destruction that they cause. I kind of like this talk about the skew of the media versus the good that the superheroes are doing, and I enjoyed that as a sort of plot point. And then he decides that their best bet is Elastigirl, and I thought that that was interesting too because they chose her instead of Mr. Incredible. And then this is the part of the movie that angers me. Mr. Incredible just turns into this annoying, petulant child. He's like, what? But what about, I'm Mr. Incredible, you did like the Mr. Incredible song with me. Like, he's just like this pillar of male privilege that I just want to beat. And it's terrible. And then it continues to be that way. So Elastigirl goes off and he's kind of like, yeah, I'm real happy for you. Oh my God, I'm so angry. I can't believe it. And then he stays at home where he struggles terribly to be a mom, which is another trope that kind of annoys me. Like, dads are perfectly capable of taking care of children. My dad did it. My mom worked and my dad took care of me when I was a kid and he was fine. He wasn't falling apart at the seams and completely incapable of making breakfast and doing homework. Like, that's just ridiculous. I dislike that trope as well. He should be perfectly capable of that. And then the whole time, even though being at home is really hard and he's supposed to realize that, like, clearly his wife has been doing a lot, he's still really sour that she gets to go off and be a superhero and he's stuck at home. And so when they're on the phone, he's like, yeah, I'm so happy for you. And she's like, I'm so excited, this thing happened. And he's like, oh, that's nice. With that kind of like pouty face, like when your brother's like, oh yeah, that's great. I'm so happy for you. I'm so glad you got that new toy. Yeah, that's awesome. But secretly inside, he's like, I really hate you and I really wanted that new toy and it's completely not fair that you got that new toy and I'm gonna go be mad about it in my room for the next hour. And that is exactly what's happening in the film, and it really, really bothers me because I don't feel like Mr. Incredible had some struggles about not being able to save everybody and not being a superhero, but that to me is a completely separate from this idea that he can't let his wife be a hero if he's not also a hero, and that annoyed me. And it made me dislike him, and I was suddenly like, wow, he's the main character in this series, and I would kind of be okay if something bad happened to him, because he's kind of a jerk. And that's not the way I should feel in a kid's movie. Okay, so if we're gonna depart ourselves from Mr. Incredible and all of my incredible problems with him, the other parts of the film were very interesting. The sort of female-led narrative, even though it's unfortunate that they had to do it by portraying such a negative male narrative as part of it, I wish that they could have done this strong, empowered female who was getting support from the men around her instead of creating this detrimental narrative where like clearly guys can't be okay with female success and clearly husbands can't support their wives without being petulant children about it. Ugh, annoyed. Anyway, I liked Elastigirl, and I liked the female character that she was sort of foiled with. And also there was another up-and-coming female hero who had this hero worship for Elastigirl, and I thought that they created the realm between these three characters really well. Spoiler alert, one of those characters ends up being the villain. She is the sister of that businessman, and she ends up being the one who orchestrates all this evil, which I'd figured out pretty early on, but it's a kid's film, so like I'm not at all judging the film for portraying a very clear narrative that I could figure out, because I think it probably should. But I liked their interactions and their discussions about living in a male-dominated world, and I thought that that was an interesting narrative, and to have a female villain versus the female hero I thought was cool, and it's nice that they really got to play off of each other about being awesome at the things they do rather than about being like women in a cat fight, and I thought that that was nice. I had a little bit of contention with the villain's premise. Her idea was that like people were too complacent when superheroes existed, and like her dad called the superheroes instead of going into the safe room and could have saved himself, but instead waited for superheroes that didn't come, and then he died. And I understand where that's coming from, but I find it fascinating that it evolved into this like we have to get rid of superheroes, because I consider like superheroes are there to fight supervillains, just like cops are there to take care of criminals, and you wouldn't be like, we should get rid of all of the cops because people should fight criminals themselves. Like, no. So like the people who are trained for this and designed for this do fight for you because that's the way that it works. But I do also consider that completely different than like relying on a superhero versus going into a safe house. Like clearly you should go to the safe house. So yeah, those are my basic thoughts on Incredibles 2. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars. I realize that's brutal. Like the film at its core wasn't bad. Like the story was good, the animation was good, they have good characters, they have good dialogue. I think it's a great follow-up to The Incredibles, but I just can't get over how much I despised Mr. Incredible in this film, and it just like drags it down. So there you go. If you liked The Incredibles, you should definitely see this because it's a continuation of the series and it's important. And also, I would like to know if your opinions differ from mine. So let me know down there in the comments if you've seen it, what you thought about it, and I'll see you tomorrow.